solita, muito qualidade.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. We'll just wait for some more time so that we can give some time for other parents to join, and then we can start with our panel discussion.
Tá. Está तो आप उसे निफ्टी वाइज को छोड़ कर इसे पकड़ा है
नहीं छोड़ इधर स्विच ऑफ
छोड़ देंगे हटा लो
छोड़ इधर
क्या नहीं कर
Recording in progress.
That webinar. ഇല്ല രജിസ്റ്റർ ചെയ്യണായിരിക്കോ?
Um, there are about 30 members right now. So, do you think we can start? All right. Good evening, everyone. A warm welcome to our panel members here and the parents joining us today. Today's discussion dwells into a crucial aspect of inclusive education, the role and necessity of a shadow teacher in supporting students with diverse needs. So, I will first start with introducing our panel members here. First, we have Dr. Bindya, who has a PhD in school psychology from North Carolina University. She's also finished her master's in special education from NCSU College, licensed to teach children with learning disabilities and intellectual disabilities in North Carolina, USA. She is a certified teach professional and practitioner for autism, and she's certified in collaborative and proactive solutions (CPS) approach for children with behavioral difficulties. She has done her postgraduate diploma in child rights law from National Law School of India. She is also a member of Child Welfare Committee of Karnataka. She provides consultation for families affected by developmental disabilities, including autism, specific learning disabilities, and ADHD. She is a consultant for mainstream schools to facilitate inclusion of children with special needs and provides consultation and training for parents and direct intervention for children experiencing learning difficulties, anxieties, behaviors, and emotional regulation difficulties. Next, we have Vindhya ma'am, who is right now currently working at Indus International School, and she is a clinical psychologist and special educator, and she has been in this sector for 15 years. She holds an MPhil degree in psychology from Kodaikanal University, MSc in clinical psychology, and she has also done her B.Ed in special education. She is a certified art-based therapy practitioner, having completed a diploma course from Prajnadhara Foundation, and she has also finished her level 2 sign language certification from Giftable Foundation, and she's currently working and pursuing her speech therapy. Last, we have Shweta, who is a consultant and an educator. Her daughter is diagnosed with ADHD in 2008, and ever since then, she has been in this personal journey of autism. She has developed vital survival strategies and has a passion for creating a level playing field for autistic children. She has worked with children and adolescents on the spectrum for over a decade and offers consulting services to small learning center from young children with special needs. So a very warm welcome to all the panel members here. So this is how we are going to go about. I will be asking a few questions, and then obviously the panel members will be leading the conversation ahead. And in the end, we'll be keeping the floor open for all the parents to ask questions as and when they want. And if you are not comfortable, maybe turning on your mic and speaking, you can also put it on the chat box, and I can, ask the question on your behalf. So let's start. I would first like to ask all three members on what is your idea about inclusion. That is something that everybody has a different idea. Some people have a right idea which we all know about, or maybe something is leading somewhere. So like, what is your idea about inclusion?
Can I begin?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so this is just from a perspective of a parent, right? Of a child who's been like, very different from the word go. Because my older daughter, Aditi, she's a non-speaking autistic. She's 18 now. She's also a published author. Now, when Aditi was first diagnosed, she was less than 3 years old. And at that point of time, I had absolutely no idea what autism meant, what autism entailed, let alone parenting a child who's so different, right? But there's one thing, that I've kind of realized all of these years, these 15 odd years of, understanding autism. See, I think inclusion, the very term inclusion, owes its existence to the term exclusion, right? If as a majority, as a neuro majority, people who are neurotypical, people who are normal, we define the rules. We define this is how, a child is supposed to learn. This is how a child is supposed to behave. This is what a child is supposed to do, right? And everybody who doesn't, the smaller percentage of children who do not fall in this category, the neuro minorities, get excluded. So why is there even a need to talk about inclusion if we do not exclude in the first place? I mean, it's, I personally am a huge believer in the concept of neurodiversity, which basically, states that people with autism, people with ADHD, people with other learning disabilities, they just have a different way of experiencing, thanks to their sensory differences. They have a different way of experiencing this world. They have a different understanding of the world. And, obviously that entails that they have a different way of learning and a different way of doing things. Now, different is not necessarily wrong. It's us, the neuromajority, who've decided that difference is wrong, right? And that is why exclusion happens. And because we exclude them, there is a need to talk about inclusion. There is a need to talk about inclusive education. And, in my experience of parenting Aditi, and also in my experience of working with other children with diverse needs, what I've realized is that most children are educable, right? Contrary to what we neuromajority believe, most children are educable. And all children, yes, I agree with Dr. Bindia there, all children are educable. And, it is up to us educators, it's up to us parents, and it's up to us, the society at large, to figure out how do we teach a child. The way that works for the neuromajority, the 70% on the bell curve, who are developing at a so-called normal rate, if you use those same strategies, if you use those same learning goals, and if you use those same methods, and more importantly, we hold, our autistic ADHD children to the same standards of performance and assessment, we come to the conclusion that this child can't learn. But, inclusion and learning can never be a one size fits all, right? So the day we realize that, the day we realize, that we have to teach some children differently in order for them to learn, and the onus is on us. The onus is not on the child to measure up to our standards, but the onus is on us to teach the child in a way that the child learns, and, put together goals that are meaningful for a child. We actually realize that this is the truth. Every single child is educable. Then we don't need to talk about inclusive education, because we are not excluding anybody. I know it's an utopia, but I think all of us have to, consciously, slowly work towards that goal, where we are trying to educate as many children as possible. So irrespective of whatever, labels they come with. So to me, that is inclusion, right? It exists because we exclude. So we decide not to exclude. We decide to change our attitude. We don't even have to talk about inclusion. Yeah, so that's inclusion for me.
Thank you, Miss. I think so. You covered the whole thing. In our school as well, I can speak according to my experience in my school as well. So our SEN team, our teachers in Indus, generally we think about every child can learn, and every child has their own style of learning, and we need to just strengthen that and then make them use those strength and then teach them. So that is where we include our differentiated instruction. It's called a differentiated instruction task, where each teacher is trained to give those differentiated instruction and the task that has been differentiated for each child, so that they can express their learning in different levels, and accordingly we assess them. So I think so that is where everyone is included and there is no exclusion at all. I think so you summarized it, and that's where we are there, heading towards it. I think so. Yeah.
I enjoy being on panels where the other panelists also say the same things that I want to say, right? So then there is no conflict, but I agree with whatever both of you just said. And I'm going to borrow something that one of my colleagues shared in one of our discussions about inclusion. And I think that's like the best imagery. So what is inclusion? And she was mentioning a garden. In a garden, you'll have trees, you'll have shrubs, you'll have climbers, you'll have, other parasitic uh, plants. You have all sorts of plants, right? But they're all nevertheless plants. We don't expect a creeper to be like a tree, right? Why are you not growing, like we don't ask the shrubs, why are you not growing tall like a tree? So, or we don't ask the creeper to, why can't you just be in one place? Or we are not putting those expectations on them. So everyone is allowed to be the way they are. And that is true inclusion for me, right? I usually say the reason why children or people who are neurodivergent get excluded is because we have those expectations. So just like Shweta pointed out, a one size fits all. When we have one expectation, there will definitely be people who are excluded. When we don't have that one expectation, or when we are ready to be flexible with our expectation, then we'll be able to include everyone. I say if a school is if a child is allowed to run around, play, hang upside down from a tree and read the book, then there is no ADHD. Right? Only because you ask the child to sit in a seat for 45 minutes and listen to a teacher and nod your head, look at the teacher and nod your head. That is listening. We're not necessarily listening, but if you can do that, then you're fine. You fit in, and then you're fine, and there are no complaints about you. So if we change the way our schools work, then we don't have these diagnoses. These diagnoses are irrelevant, right? So to me, that is inclusion. I mean, where we have no one expectation, and then everybody is included because we are able to um, alter the expectation for each one's level.
Okay, moving on to the next question. Why, according to you, there is a requirement for a shadow teacher to be the setting inclusive? Is a setting still called inclusive if there are no shadow teachers?
I'll take that one. I think, on the contrary to your question, I think a shadow teacher also makes this setting a little exclusive. I don't think it's making it any inclusive. For the longest time, I work with an organization, Insight, that provides shadow teachers, right? And for the longest time, I was not a believer of this whole idea of shadow teacher. I still think it is a little exclusionary from to a certain extent, because a child is sitting with someone, which is not what all children are not sitting with a personal um, support teacher, right? So that makes it exclusionary as far as the child is concerned. So why is it that we need a shadow teacher to make it inclusive? Is because we have that one expectation. We are not able to bend our rules. We are not able to alter our expectations as per the child's needs. So we need somebody like that. So if we are saying every child should be in the class, sitting and listening and writing and taking notes down, some children are not able to do that. If we expect every child to be quiet, speak only when asked to, or raise their hands when they need, a turn to speak, or be nice to everybody else in the class, if this is the expectation we have for all of them, then we will need a shadow teacher for some children who have difficulties regulating their emotions and their behaviors. And that is the reason why we need a shadow teacher, to help that child regulate in a setting where the child cannot self-regulate. Can we do it without a shadow? Absolutely. We can do it without a shadow. And I have been in schools where I have facilitated inclusion, consulted and facilitated inclusion, where we did it without shadows. Is it easy? Not at all. It's an extremely uphill task where we do it without a shadow, because then we want the entire team in the school on board with us. All the regular ed teachers should be on board with this idea. I mean, regular ed teachers are the ones who would have a difficulty with this the first. They would, I've had teachers who would come and tell me, if you can take this child out of the class, I can teach the other children. I'm like, I'm sorry, this child has as much right to be in that class just like the others. And that is where that child belongs. So you will have to figure out a way to include this child in your classroom, right? So that is a very complex, very what do you say? There's a lot of effort involved in that, where you get all the teachers on board, train all of them. I mean, I've worked in that school for about 5 years. I've constantly trained my teachers. I said, we will not have a shadow teacher in the school. We will have to make sure our special ed and our regular ed teachers take care of the needs of the children. But it was truly an uphill task. And at the end of 5 years, I still had a lot of teachers who still didn't believe in what we were doing and who still wanted things changed to the way they were comfortable. So in that sense, a shadow teacher becomes, I call it a shortcut to inclusion. That's what I call the shadow program, because that helps us. So even though I wasn't for it initially, the reason why I am supporting it still is because of shadow teachers, we have many more children in many more schools attending regular classrooms. If it weren't for a shadow teacher, then I don't know how many schools we would have been able to make inclusive with the approach that I talked about first, where we talk to all the teachers, we train all the teachers, we bring on board like even the admin staff, the support staff. Everybody should be on board if we are doing it without a shadow. So with a shadow, it becomes a lot more easier because the shadow is not just a support teacher, she's also an advocate for that child. So there are a lot of issues that the shadow is able to fight and ease out for that child so that the child can function in that setting.
Can I bring in a word here, please?
Yes,
Hello.
please. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm Sita Lakshmi, and my granddaughter Tanvi is with the Indus, and Vidya ma'am knows her very well. So I have an issue, like I have been with Insighte, and last 2.5 years we have been, having shadow teachers, excellent shadow teachers, no doubt about it. But of late, the pattern which I am seeing Tanvi exhibiting is that she is averse to having a shadow because that makes her exclusive. She becomes very different in the class from the others, and that is something which she doesn't like one bit. But again, there are times when she needs the help of a shadow. So it is like a wish wand, that she just swirls a wand and then she has to jump out of nowhere to help her. And the minute she doesn't want her, she has to just disappear. But that's a struggle which I think many children will be going through at this age. She's 8 years now, she's going to be 9. And her issues are behavioral. So impulse control, and those are the main things that she is going through. So I understand that for the sake of the other children and their safety and their to take care of them, we need. I mean, the shadow teacher does help, but it is also impacting her psychologically. So how do we do? How do we balance the two?
Let me answer that question before we come to you, Vijeta. Is that okay? Um, Sita Lakshmi ma'am, I am, I completely hear what you're asking. And in fact, at Insight, one of the policies that I have personally pushed for is that we will not give a shadow after a certain age. And that's exactly for this reason. Now, we usually say around 11, 12, if the child still needs a shadow, we will probably reevaluate the situation to see what other setting, maybe the setting is not working out for this child. And that's the reason why she might still need the shadow. But around 11, 12 years of age, the child is already a preteen. And there are a lot of, social, peer related issues that will arise anyway. And this is the last thing you want a child to have, when having it's like a babysitter being with you when you're 11 or 12, right? When nobody else has it and you're trying to fit in. And this is what's going on with you. And I don't want to go to school with somebody who's going to support me personally. So for that reason, we had made it a point that we will not do it after a certain age. And you see now, your little one is just 9 now, and she's already feeling the pinch, right? So at that time, I usually prefer listening to the child to see, okay, is this too much for you to handle? Then we might have to think about a different setting. Because if they're continuing in the same setting, then maybe this kind of a support is necessary, right? And I'm talking from the shadow teacher's perspective or from that side. I'm sure Miss Vindhya can tell us more about how, this can be done or how this can be supported from the school's end, probably. Now, having said that, even though, so this has been a policy that we've tried to follow, but we do have a few children we are supporting now who are about 13, 12 years of age, I think. But we had one client who came from a college. I mean, I was really upset when I got that request. And this is one of the prominent colleges in Bangalore, and they had a psychology department. And this particular adult was studying in the psychology department, and the psychology department refused to, cooperate with us because we said we can't provide a shadow. They said they have to have a shadow, otherwise they will not let this person continue. And we said we can't have a shadow. This is a young adult you're talking about. But they insisted. We said we can work with students in their class, maybe have a buddy system. have somebody be there just whenever this person needs support, this other students in the class can support. We gave them a lot of different suggestions, but the college refused, the department refused. They said, if you can give us a shadow, this person can continue. So our hands were tied and we were forced to give a shadow. And there we also had a little bit of a vested interest, because we wanted to have a foot in the door in higher ed as well, so that our children, when they grow up, they can go into higher education as well, right? So that was one exemption we did, and we actually gave somebody a shadow in college. But otherwise, we don't encourage the idea of a shadow for a child who is older than 11, 12 years.
Hi, good evening, Vindhya. This is Vijayta. I want to understand what is the whole, what is the genesis of the concept of shadow? How did it start here? When did it become a norm rather than an aberration? And what are the laws in India covering that?
Vijayta, just a minute. Can I have Miss Vindhya? Did you want to add to the previous question? Yeah, Vijayta, can you just
Yeah, yeah,
hold on for a
absolutely,
little bit?
absolutely.
Sorry, I'll just finish that loop.
Yeah.
Miss Vindhya.
Hi, Miss. In our school, actually, there are certain things that is, for example, if because Miss Sita Lakshmi got up with the Tanvi, so I'll continue with that. So right now, as Tanvi is 9 years, so for her, she knows that when I get into these behavior patterns, what should I do? So it's already trained for her. See, she has a list of checklist that is there that she has to do. So what happens is she is still young to understand that when I get angry or when I get into that tantrum mode, what should I do? Those checklist is disappearing. So at that time, she doesn't know what she has to do. So what she does is she is getting into those problems as and when it is there, and she comes to me. So when she comes to me, then I sit and talk to her. She says that, okay, I was upset. When I get upset, I'm angry, but I don't know why I'm upset. So she is still not able to identify where is the trigger coming. So we are helping out for her to understand those things. So every day there is a reflection that she writes, and there is a feedback that we give. And again, every day there is a feedback going to the parents as well as the shadow teacher. The shadow teacher is also given certain strategies as well. So how to deal when there is certain behavior that is happening in the class. And we do give strategies to the class teachers as well, homeroom teachers, so that when there is a trigger point, when there is an possible trigger points that we have identified in the class for the shadow as well as the teachers, we guide them and then say that these are the things that is triggering. Maybe when you feel that this is what is a trigger point that is going to be happening, just prompt the student that these are the strategies, remember you have to do this. So we are still in the process, and we have found that some of the students have really been good in those when they are using those strategies. And it's a teamwork. Again, it's a teamwork. It cannot happen in 1 day or 2 days. It has to have it should be done regularly, and that's where we are heading actually. So we are also heading towards that itself for Tanvi.
I'm just going to add to that, Miss Vindhya, because I think Indus is one of the schools that we have had such successful relationship, like working together, because we get that kind of, reciprocation from the school. I've had a lot of shadows who, I mean, I think most of the shadows at Insight have been, um, have been very, very good at understanding when to let go. I think that is one thing I have noticed in most of the teachers I've worked with at Insight. They know when to let go, and they give them the space. They give the child the space, right? And that's exactly what we want. Like I've had shadow teachers who have moved to the back row, not
Yes.
sitting with the child anymore. They'll go
Yeah.
sit behind the back row. And
Yeah.
whenever the child says, I need you, she'll come in. Or
Yes.
there are shadows who have said that who has helped other children around in the class as well. So when this child looks at it, it's not just my person. She also seems to be. So she blends in more like a teacher's assistant in the classroom. So these are all things we try to do also to make the child feel a little better in the classroom.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
yeah, so these are the only little ways, because as Miss Vindhya pointed out, no matter how many strategies we give them, their executive functioning skills are not at a point where they can do it on their own. They still need external help, right? You can give them the strategies to identify when the triggers come, or, this is what you should do when this happens. You can tell them all that, but in that moment,
Yeah.
there's no guarantee that they will use it, right? And that is the reason why we have a shadow too. But
And I'm
there are
sure
a lot of
as she grows, uh, as
it will
she
get
grow,
better.
it will
It
be
will get
better, and she will start thinking about all those things. So don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. They are implementing in school all that you were saying, Vidya,
Yeah.
that the shadow moves to the back of the class. She did try sitting out for one period, like a specialist class, like a dance. She would be out of the classroom so that she dances on her own. And then prompt cards, like when she have flashcards, if you want help, then you wave it and then she comes. They are trying all that. But then again, it's a
Yeah.
on and off thing. Like she'll say, "I behave badly because I don't want a shadow teacher. I don't want a person sitting next to me and looking over my shoulder. I don't want it. Everybody gets to do what they want. Only I have my shadow teacher coming and telling me that I've got to do this and I've got to do that. Why can't I be like others? You want me to be like others? Let me be like others."
Right.
Difficult to
Our
cope.
little people, they have their own minds,
Yes.
and yeah, we will have to just work it out one day at a time, one incident at a time, I guess, right? Anyways, I think we'll move on to Miss Vijeta's question. Miss Vijeta, that's a very interesting question that you asked. And I think, just like I pointed out initially, if you look at the laws say that all our children have equal rights to be in school, right? But when it comes from the school's end, that equal right is not exercised, or that provision is not given. Most of our families have to run from pillar to post, figuring out a school for their children. And I know in my consulting sessions with families, I've told them, you find a school, don't commit to it, because it may work out for you this year, it may not work out for you next year, right? Because things change, classrooms change, teachers change, a lot of things happen that might make it not so good environment for your child in another year, right? So there are families who move, like, every 1 year or every 2 years from one school to the other because it's not working out. But we support the families, and we look at what are the needs of that family, and why do they have to move right now. So we support the families according to whatever the needs come up. Now, why has shadow teaching become the norm and not the aberration? It's because we realized that if we want to do inclusion, and as I said, that first model where I go and consult for each school and make them inclusive from the core, that is hard. Because why? That is not the priority for most private schools. Children with special needs is not their priority. For most of them, it's a checkbox, right? Yeah, we are inclusive, we are giving admission to them, and it ends there. Inclusion ends there. Once they start going to those schools after getting admissions is when the real journey starts, because most children are not being supported the way they should be. So then, how do you call yourself inclusive, right? So there are a lot of different needs that each child poses, no matter what the diagnosis is. You may have two children with ADHD diagnosis, but may give you very different manifestations of behaviors. And if the school is not equipped to deal with those, then they don't take the onus. The child has to bear the burden of keeping up with the expectations of the school. And when the child does not do that, the child is the one who gets kicked out. So this is what we started seeing initially when it came to inclusive spaces. The children were not being supported appropriately. And that is when we realized, okay, when we provide a shadow, a lot of these issues are being ironed out. Now, even after providing a shadow, we've had a lot of schools where we are at loggerheads with them, trying to fight it out and trying to say, this is not this is not rightfully done for this child. I mean, there have been a lot of fights, a lot of discussions, we going and visiting schools, all that has happened. It's still happening. So, as I said, that shadow teacher becomes that shortcut to inclusion because it's easier for the schools because they don't have to take up a lot more responsibilities because there's a shadow teacher and the shadow teacher takes care of the needs of the child. It becomes easier on the families also because the school does not keep calling them and telling them, oh, this has happened, that has happened. The shadow is taking care of a lot of the difficulties that arises while the child is in the school premises. So then we realized that this seems to be working. A lot of schools started realizing that this seems to be working. So a lot of schools became willing to provide admission to our children if there is a shadow. And that is how the shadow became a norm. Right. So now we see that this is the best way we are able to help our children access mainstream schooling with the support of a shadow teacher.
Okay. But like, your organization Insight, is it? Um,
Yes.
so you are training shadow teachers and you're providing shadow teachers. So you're also, in a way, taking onus of, you know, those uh, teachers. In Delhi, I've seen the norm is to just get hold of any pass out
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
RCI or RCI certified person, any DELD, DLED, sorry,
Mhm.
person, and then make them shadow teachers and send them to school.
Right.
The most important concern here is the safety of the child. A person with lesser experience wouldn't have, the threshold of patience that is required, and the safety of the child is always compromised when that happens. And the school
Yeah.
does not take any responsibility because it's the onus of the parents to get police verification done, training of the shadow done, whether the shadow is interested in getting trained or not, because actually they're all, I have found, actually just waiting around for a government job to happen after the certification, the
Right.
yeah.
Right.
So I really don't understand what would be the correct way to train a shadow. um, sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm getting emotional.
That's it.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm in a meeting. I'm in a meeting. Can I talk to you after this? Yes, I know. I know. It's okay. This is my younger one. He's Yathat. Can you say hi to everyone?
Hi.
He's just come back from football.
Okay.
It's all right. No problem. No problem. We can talk about it after a while. All right? Okay. Go wash yourself up. Thank you. So, what is it that we parents can do in a situation where I can see that sometimes my child's safety is also
Right.
compromised.
Right.
Sometimes, on most days, I'm getting, you know, one thing is the feedback, but what I'm getting is regular complaints even after having provided a shadow, which is for which I'm like, I'm paying the school fee, and I'm also
Right.
paying through the
Right.
nose to have a shadow at school, and yet, like, getting complaints every day. And a lot of times I have to accompany the shadow to shadow my child at school, especially
Right.
during this growing up phase.
That's very unfortunate because and that is probably I think that's the story we hear from a lot of people who have hired shadows independently and would send them because most shadows are special educators and special educators come with a very different mindset because it's all about teaching the child and making sure that the child keeps up with whatever the expectation is in the school. At Insight, the thing is, I think the one of the advantages at Insight is that we've been around for a while now, and we have worked with so many different schools, so many different families, so many different children that we've been able to develop our own philosophy. And our philosophy is very child centric and very child rights respecting. So for us, it is not about if the child is meeting all the expectations that the school is putting in place. It is about how happy the child is. We are worried about the child's mental health first. So our teachers are trained for that, right? Our philosophy is communicated to the teachers through the trainings. So we have initial trainings when the teachers come in, and we have a set of trainings which takes them through that. There's a lot of we say there's a lot of unlearning that the teachers also do through that training once they come into our organization. And then they learn about a lot of the things that we do here and how we do it differently. Because they are part of this organization, when there is a safety breach, the families can come directly to the organization and the organization takes care of it. So a lot of these things are taken care of because these teachers are part of this organization. We also find that, so just like you said, when you are hiring them independently, then you don't know how to train them. And sometimes this initial training is also not sufficient, because just by giving them like 8 sessions of training, we can't conclude that our teachers have understood what it is that we're trying to do. When they start working with the child, we have weekly meetings where these teachers are supposed to be part of, and they listen to other people and their experiences, whatever they are doing with their children and whatever difficulties they are having with their children, and what are some of the strategies that they've come up with for those children, and the other teachers learn from it. So I'm part of the meeting, I'm supervising them, and I'm telling them, hey, this is not the right thing to do. We will not do that. Let's try something different. Let's try it like this. So when we are giving them these strategies and giving them these ideas, other teachers are also listening to it and they're learning from it, even though they're not engaging with that difficulty firsthand. So when they have a child who probably exhibits those kinds of behaviors later, they can use these strategies with those children. So that is the idea. So this whole, this continuous training, which we refer to as supervision, is what actually works for these teachers, and not just the initial training. So even if we provide a training, which Insight usually does, we are happy to provide trainings to independent shadows. They can come and attend our training for a fee. That is possible, but I know that is not sufficient. Even if they go through that, later on when they have difficulties, how they problem solve is what we need to train teachers to do, which is what is missing in most, shadow programs or shadow trainings.
Shouldn't then schools have they should collaborate with organizations which train shadows and engage shadows which work on the school's behalf, rather than parents handpicking anyone and just getting them as shadows. And the anyways you the schools will charge the fee. They can the parents are anyways paying
Right.
the shadows fees also. They can pay it directly to the school. Wouldn't it be a safer and a more smooth protocol to have in place?
Um,
Also, I'm sorry,
it
I
would.
forgot to mention that I'm not based in Bangalore. I'm based in
I
Delhi.
figured you're from Delhi. Yeah, I figured that from your comment earlier. So it might look like it's a better option for the school to be working with the organization. We've done that also, and I have personally liked the other model. The reason being, at that point, we are advocates for the families and for the child. If we are coming from the school's end, then that piece is missing. So we don't have interaction with the family, so we don't know what is happening between the family and the school. So a lot of things we are not privy to. In the other way, we are able to access the school, because the school has to be working with us, because our shadow is going there, and our shadow has to follow a lot of the expectations that the school has put forth. And our families are also involved, because we are coming from the family side. So we have found that to be a better model than where the school is collaborating with us. Miss Vindhya, you had something to add?
Yes. So because I'll speak about the admission process that is going on. So because I am there in the admission process as well. So we usually brief them about the curriculum. Each curriculum has their own expectation. That is something which is there, and it's something where it is the expectation from the curriculum. So we do explain them, and we do explain where the child is standing actually. So we do an informal assessment for the child when they are coming for the admission, where we observe for the behavioral patterns or the learning also. Where is the child standing right now? So for example, if the child is in grade 2 and the child is able to do certain things, that is a prep level or a UKG level, then we see that there is a gap. So when there is a gap, what happens is the child will feel a little difficult to meet that expectation. As I said, our school is more into differentiated instruction. So the differentiated instruction itself is where the child can move easily from whatever level he is to the next level easily when there is a differentiated instruction given. So the teachers are also there, but when there is a certain person who is giving that one-on-one with the child, we see that the gap that is filled is much more faster, and we becoming a team as such, because we do have a feedback from the Insighte shadow teachers as well, and we do meet for the monthly meetings. The shadow teacher also tell us about the progress that the child has made. So we are in a team, and when there is everyone in the same, we are working on the same goal, the filling up of the gap becomes much more easier. And if you see, by the time they are out of PYP or the primary years, they don't have a shadow teacher. They're already to the grade level, and they actually do very well when they are moving to the MYP as well. So that is the goal. The ultimate goal is the child has to be independent, and then he has to do things independently. So that journey to help that child come from where there is a learning gap to the gap that is filled and happily having that learning. So he has to learn happily. There should be a happy learning situation over there where it is not forced for the child, but there is a happy environment for the child to learn. So that is where we tell the parents as well that we give as a recommendation that if there is a shadow, it'll be easy for the child to do these kind of things.
Can I just add something from a parent perspective?
Yeah.
I think also, when we do realize, at the end of the day, I do not believe in labels, right? But then we do have a fair idea of what is expected, of a child at a certain age, at a certain level. And when we do realize that there is a gap, now this gap need not necessarily be academic. This gap can more often times, especially, children who get mainstreamed, who enter mainstream schools, more often than not, this gap is not necessarily academic that they bridge. It's socio-emotional learning. Some children take a little longer, to develop that emotional maturity, right? And at the end of the day, a child, who tends to get triggered at things that seem inconsequential to other children of that age, obviously will require some support in the classroom in order to be able to manage that situation, which is where I think shadow teachers do a brilliant job. Because at the end of the day, like Ms. Vidya was mentioning some time back, we can do all the CBT that we want for a child, but you're talking about a 6-7-year-old child here, 8-year-old child here. If only that child could, remember all the strategies, apply it on herself and calm herself down in the class, she wouldn't even have a differential need. And you don't even, there's absolutely no need to be talking about all of this, right? So as a parent, for me, I think it is very important to understand what my child is, what my child's strengths are, what my child's challenges are, more importantly. Understand, the different kind of schools that exist, the different curriculums, and the different setup of schools make a lot of difference, and figure out what kind of a setup works for my child, right? If you are constantly, even after providing shadow, hearing complaints from the school, then maybe that is not the right kind of setup given my child's needs. I'm one for inclusion. I believe every child needs to be educated, but like I said, inclusion can never be one size fits all. And the current program that the child is in, and with the current level of support, clearly there's a mismatch that is not happening, right? So maybe it is also time to go back and reevaluate what is the kind of school setup, what is the classroom size, what kind of a program. Like for instance, I am very aware of the IB program. The IB PYP is very child friendly. I'm also aware of a typical classroom structure, which can be a challenge for many children with differential needs, right? So it's also probably time to, as a parent, take a step back and evaluate the other things as well. One, of course, is the efficacy of the shadow teacher, and that's one side of it. The other side of it is this the right kind of program for my child? Is this the right kind of school for my child? Is this the right kind of setup for my child? Would something else work better? A smaller classroom size, or a slightly more experiential learning, slightly less writing, depending on what the needs of the child are. I think as a parent, it also helps to take a step back and, I don't know, do some research maybe sometimes. Yeah.
before we go ahead with other questions, since Shweta mentioned the need to understand what kind of a setting a child requires, from a parent point of view, I have a question for you. That, for example, if you're looking for a school for your child, in terms of inclusivity, what are the things that you keep in your mind that would help you select the best school for your child?
See, I think for any parent, the first and foremost step is to accept your child for what your child is, right? So obviously, I mean, if you're talking about inclusion, you're talking about the fact that your child is not fitting into a 30 children right on the board classroom setup. Your child has some differential needs. I think it's very keen to identify what your child's challenges are, right? And once you identify what your child's challenges are, you take a look at the different kind of options, right? If your child, if for instance, your child has a specific learning disability, but your child is emotionally decently well regulated, right? But the child has difficulty in reading, writing, and spelling. So there could be certain kind of schools which offer support. Now, these children may or may not require shadow teachers. More often than not, they may not require shadow teachers. What they require is some amount of remediation to work on the skills, to work on some of the difficulties, and some level of differentiated instruction even within the classroom, differentiated assessment needs, right? Those kind of things will probably work for that kind of a child. Now, if you're looking at a child who is brilliant in academics, but has issues accepting that she's made a mistake, accepting that she needs to correct something, accepting it is the socio-emotional part, right? I mean, we do have children, neurodiverse children who are like that. And, so then you probably need to be looking at a school with clearly looking at a school with a differentiated instruction. I would personally say, an IB program, because the IB program, the way it is built, and with so much of focus on cognition, with so much of focus on understanding. Now, a child with a lot of, cognition and understanding and differentiated instruction will thrive in that kind of a setup, will require probably a shadows, help in the classroom, because clearly that's not a child who needs to be, going away from the class for whatever, because, we're not talking of much skill deficits there, right? But what the child needs is support when, when a trigger or when an emotional event is occurring, right? So that the child slowly picks up the ability to work around, but that is very slow. It takes its time. So that, probably you have to be looking at a smaller classroom size. You have to be looking at a program that allows differentiated instruction. And you have to be looking at the flexibility. If a child is at X level in a certain subject, she gets to work on materials at X level in a certain subject. But a child is at, a lesser level in a certain subject, then she gets to, slowly work on that. So you probably need to be looking at a school that's like that. Now, if you have a child with physical difficulties, you have a child who, let's say, needs access to wheelchair, or you have a child that, has difficulty climbing stairs and getting downstairs, you obviously, the first thing is to, look at a school that is accessible from a physical perspective. A school may be amazing and inclusive, but if the class is in the third floor and this child needs to be using a wheelchair or is struggling to go up the stairs, it's clearly not going to make sense, right? So I think, yes, as a parent, the first and foremost step is to understand your own child. Take some time to understand what your child is. Try to get some professional help, talk to somebody who can help you understand what your child is. I'm not saying get a diagnosis, get a label, but, talk to a professional who can help you understand where your child is, what your child's learning styles are, what your child's strengths are, more importantly, what your child's challenges are. Then go out and look for, the schooling options and try to find the best thing that works, and oftentimes, even after this, we end up failing a couple of times, we end up changing schools and things like that. But I think this is like, the basic thing you need to do first. When you realize that, your child is for some reason not falling within the 70%, the bell curve, then I think, yeah, this is the first thing that you probably need to be doing. So, yeah.
Thank you, Shweta. We have Paritosh here who wants to ask a question.
Yeah, so my question is, so this is regarding my daughter who is 6 years old, and she has been diagnosed some mild ADHD and learning disability. So my question here is that how do we decide about putting the child in a quote unquote regular school with shadow teacher vis-a-vis special alternative center? where so at when how
Hi, Paritosh, can you still hear us?
We lost him, right? This,
It's okay. I'll go ahead and answer that question.
yeah.
And probably see the recording. Paritosh, that's a very good question. And I think one of the short answer to it is always inclusive school. And especially if you're thinking about a child with ADHD, most often than not, their cognitive levels are going to be right on par, if not better than the other children in their class. So it's such a waste to have them attend a special school. Personally, I'm not a fan of special schools, and because I think that is a segregated setting. We call it a segregated and congregated setting. It's
Oh,
aside.
fan.
It's away from your mainstream setup, and it is also putting together a lot of people who are like them. Instead, if they are in an inclusive setting, we've seen a lot of difference that comes from children just being in an inclusive environment. And it is not the academic progress we are talking about. It is that socio-emotional learning that Shweta was mentioning earlier. Just by being around their typically developing peers, children learn a lot of skills. They tend to try and work towards those skills even if it is not coming easily for them. So we see that a lot. We see children who are striving to get there a lot more when they are in an inclusive setting than in a special school. So special school is always the last option. And I wouldn't even keep it as an option. I would try a lot of different inclusive schools. And if the inclusive schools don't work out, at as I told you earlier, around like 11 or 12 years of age, we would reevaluate the situation to see if an inclusive school is still an option. But even then, I'm not suggesting a special school. I suggest something called an alternative school. An alternative school is something in between your mainstream school and your alternative schools are very different from your conventional school. They are not like your where you go to school, everybody sits in the same classroom, everybody sits the same way, everybody attends the same lecture, everybody is writes the same exam, their assessment is also standardized. I mean, it is not like that. Alternate schools are usually schools where they understand each child and they teach the child accordingly. So we have a lot of alternate schools coming up, especially in Bangalore. We have so many that have come up lately. So that is another option that I would suggest, not a special school. So the answer to you, Paritosh, is inclusive school. It's inclusive school, inclusive school, inclusive school. And then later on, if it becomes really difficult for the child to adjust in an inclusive school, then we think about other options. Again, not a special school, but other options.
I hope your question is answered, Paritosh. Swasti, before we move ahead, there has been a question on the chat box that was asked for me to read it out. Can I just go ahead with it before you ask your question?
Yeah,
All right.
sure, sure.
Yeah, I will just read it out, okay? So it's written that I have one question. I have enrolled my son in one of the schools in Bangalore for class 1. School is a small setup with 25 kids per section. We wanted shadow teacher for our son who has developmental delay with mild ADHD, and Insight has assigned a shadow, but now the school says that they will be able to manage just with the class teacher without shadow teacher. But the school does not have a special educator, and we are a bit worried if we can cope without additional support. What would be your advice in this case? Should we wait for the school to come back with something, an alternative, or like, yeah, she's asking for an alternative and a suggestion.
I don't know who this is, but I don't know the
The
name.
parent name is Harshita.
Harshita, if the school says that we will take care of it, let the school take care of it. I would say, because that is what we all want. We want the child to go to school without a shadow teacher, right? We provide a shadow teacher as long as the child needs the shadow teacher. So if the school thinks that they can take care of your child without a shadow teacher, that is what we need to go with. So let's just, let's just respect the school's decision on that. And let's, wait and watch to see how the school is able to manage. Because if the school is able to do that, then there's nothing like it. Now, if at some point the school feels like, sorry, this is not working out, let's bring back the shadow teacher, we can reconsider it that time also. But if the school is willing to do it, let's go for it.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yes, Swasti, you can go ahead with your question.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I just wanted to ask that my daughter is 7.5 years old now, and she is diagnosed with ASD, and we are able to manage a lot of things like going to any public place or other any place other than school. We have achieved good amount of flexibility and easily able to manage in social settings and all. But somewhere from past 2 to 3 years, because when she got diagnosed, it just COVID came in between, and she could never go to school. So when she started going to school, it was already delay. But we started from nursery. But now, from past 2 years, we are struggling, settling in the school in spite of she having all the skills of going to school. Like she wants to go to school on her own. She's very happy there. She goes there happily, and she is fairly good in academics. If I, easily, she can easily manage. And but somewhere, because of like presently we are in Bhopal and we have a transferable job. We tried in Pune also, but now we are in Bhopal. So I only wanted to ask a suggestion, like places like Bhopal are hardly, there is hardly any awareness, not like Bangalore and places like that. So we don't have those kind of choices of choosing an inclusive school. We have to somehow choose a school and then try to make it inclusive. So that is the case. So I wanted to ask if you can provide few tips on finding some so-called shadow teacher here, because there are hardly any awareness. So some specific tips, to check whether the shadow teacher will be apt for our daughter or not. First, number one, this. Secondly, how to avoid wasting a lot of time in 1 or 2 months, and just for her to accommodate my daughter or understand my daughter, and wasting 2 months in the school, because now vacations are about to come. So, and third point is that once we get a shadow, how do we set goals? How will we come to know whether the shadow is actually doing her job or not? Because we won't be there to see, and the school is not inclusive, so we don't expect much feedback from the school also. So how do we ensure, that things are being done?
Swasti, the first part of your question, right? Now, our children may have, may seem all right at home, but home is very different from school. School is a highly socially stressful environment. At home, it's just parents, their comfort zone. Parents get them, they know where to go to get what. They know how to navigate around home and how to navigate around their parents and all that. But when they go to school, there is an adult and there are so many other children, and there is a lot more social stressors there that becomes difficult for them to handle. Some of our children are brilliant when it comes to academics, but it's that socio-emotional part that is difficult for them. And that is what a shadow can definitely support. Now, it seems like your child may be able to benefit from having a shadow teacher, but then again, that is something we can probably evaluate by talking more about it in person. Um, the second part of your question, how do you identify a shadow? Um, Now that's a little difficult. That's a little tricky question, because here also what we are doing is we hire graduates from psychology program. So they all our teachers have a master's in psychology, and we train them to work with children with special needs in the school environment. So one thing that Insight has done in the past is that we've had requests from other cities. So we are primarily based in Bangalore, but we've had requests from other cities like Pune and all that. And what we told the family is that if you can hire somebody, we can train that person. That person can be part of our, supervision and all that. And they can continue to support your child in Bhopal at the school. This is something we have done before, and because most of our trainings, like I think a lot of our trainings have moved offline now, but most of our supervision sessions continue to be online. So your teacher can access those from Bhopal also. So that is something we can offer. The third thing is how do you set goals? And setting goals is again based on what the child's needs are. Like Miss Vindhya had pointed out earlier, it is not about the child being able to do whatever the class is making them do. It is about where the child is right now and helping the child to start from there, work slowly towards the next level. So your child may be in first standard where everybody is reading textbooks and answering questions. But if your child is not at a level where the child can read fluently, that is where we start. We are not going to make your child do that first standard stuff that your first standard class is making her do, but we make her do things that she can do at this point and slowly build it up to take her to the level where she will get to a point where she can meet the expectations of the class. So that is how we look at what is the baseline, what is your child's current level of functioning, and we decide our goals based on that. How do we monitor the shadows? Again, very difficult. We've had we've had a lot of positive experiences. We've had some negative experiences also, because again, we don't function in a school where the supervisor can go around and look at all their shadows to see how they are doing and all that. We can't do that. We send a shadow to a school, we send them with the trust. We've trained them, we trust them, and we send them there. And after that, we work closely with the parent, we work closely with the school to understand how the shadow is performing there. So we get all this information and we do like this 360-degree of information gathering, and that is how we understand how well the shadow is doing there or not. And then based on that, we decide if the shadow should continue with us or not, based on the performance reviews that we get from all these different points of contact. So that's how we evaluate our shadow's performance.
Okay, thank you so much. As far as reading and all, you said that we are still put her in senior KG because we want
I
her
was
to be
going to ask
comfortable.
you that. Yeah.
Yeah. So academics is not at all our priority because she's already doing a lot of things in her own interest with her own. She's very fond of writing and reading and all. She may not be age appropriately as per this thing, but it doesn't matter to us at all because she's happy doing a lot of things.
Right.
Only
Right.
thing is that she loves going to school so much that but she loves but still and she's happy and she's trying to settle there. So we are not able to actually identify whether she really needs a shadow or not, because in past you can say 1 year she's been to one stable school. She did her lower KG, and we have achieved a lot. Like she stands in the assembly now in line, and she's coming back after the class in the line only towards the gate, and a lot of other things also which are have improved. So I am not able to decide because then she's able to achieve so many things slowly on her own. So will shadow really help or not? That you're not able to decide. And actually getting a shadow here is also a big challenge. But
Yeah.
first we need to be convinced that we need a shadow or not. How to decide that whether you need a shadow or not?
I think that's something you can decide with the help of the school also, because it all depends on how difficult the school is finding to help her, to support her in the classroom. So usually we provide a shadow when the school finds it difficult to support the child in a classroom of 25 or 30 children. So just like Harshita asked earlier, the school has said that we don't need a shadow, we will take care of it. Then so be it. So unless a school comes back and tells you, hey, it's very difficult for us to support your child without an external help, at that point you can consider a shadow thing.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
There are no questions as of now, so I would like to go ahead. This question is for Vindhya ma'am. Since obviously you're working with Indus from such a long time, so could you tell how your school, that is Indus International, promote inclusivity, and what specific measures is the school taking to ensure an inclusive setup within the educational framework?
As I said, the child has to learn in a happy environment. So the child has to have those where he is having that eagerness to learn, and he's happy to learn whatever the teacher teaches. So that's where our school is on, and we want the child, our children, to cherish those learning, have those learning, experience those learning as well. So that is where the differentiated instruction comes. So if you see our curriculum as such, each of the subjects are not taught as a regular board teaching. So it's not a lecture that we give in the class. So it's more of an IB curriculum. IB curriculum is more of where the child learns by himself. So we just provide an experience for the child to understand that this is what it is, that this is what we are learning today. So there is something called as learning centers. So in each class, there are certain learning centers where the child moves around and then learns the concept. So there are experiences that is being given to every child, and he learns in his own pace. So maybe he moves from one center, he learns something in one center, and he passes on to the next center. So it's all where it is experience that they experience it through those experience centers, and then they collaborate. So here again, the teacher's involvement is only setting up the centers over there. And what they do is, the main thing is the collaboration, where the child comes back to the classroom and then sits in his group with his peers and then share his experience. Hey, this one I saw it in this experience center, and this one I saw. So there is a lot of discussion that happens. And later on, what they do is they do write it on a chart. So when they are collaborating and they write about all these thoughts and everything, and then they share it in the class as well as a group. So what happens is we get to know that the child is learning in a different way. There are different wow element that comes in each children's class that we are doing it, because each child learns in a different way. And when we put all these together, we find, actually, we as a teacher, we learn from the children actually. And that's how it becomes much more easier for our children to be in this curriculum, because it's more of where the child experiences in his own level and then shares it also. And it's a happy environment again. So because he's talking with his peers, he's talking to his teachers as well, sharing his learning. And it's not judged that, okay, this is what I expected and this is what I want you to say it. That is not there. So whatever level, whatever understanding they have, they share it in the classroom. I hope I answered that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Vindhya ma'am. I have the next question is for Shweta. So, like, you have been obviously using the shadow services. So, could you share your experience with shadow teachers and how has it impacted your child's education?
Just to clarify, the need for shadow can be across board. It can be because a child is not able to learn at a certain level. It can be because a child has certain deficits. It can also be if a child has, a fairly high level of IQ, but has difficulties, with socio-emotional regulations, which, I mean, I hate to use labels here, but then, so some amount of giftedness also comes with some amount of, social difficulties regulating their social-emotional behaviors, right? A need to excel at everything that they do, a need to do things at a certain level, and the inability to accept a mistake. These are the kind of triggers that happens when a child has like my younger daughter has a higher level of intelligence and wants to do things at a certain level, right? So the way it has kind of worked for her is, one, of course, like Ms. Vidya was saying, the IB curriculum. The IB curriculum is a very child-friendly curriculum. So what happens is that she gets to experience and learn. So when you're experiencing and learning, it is what you're learning. right? So you may learn, so nobody holds the standard and says that you have to learn at this level. If you're learning something at this level, so be it. If you take longer to learn something, so be it. So, the system, the IB program being the way it is, I think kind of accounts for the fact partially. Partially, the program is based largely on cognition. So when a child has a higher cognitive ability, the child fits into that system very easily, right? So that has also worked for her. The part where I think the shadow teacher comes in and plays the role, typically with my daughter, is when she makes a mistake, she will trigger, she'll just go off, she'll start crying, and she'll assume it to be like, how can I make a mistake, right? And if that is the level of expectation that you have set for yourself, then obviously, I mean, at the end of the day, you're a first grader, you're 6 years old, and you will make mistakes, especially when you're in an environment that encourages you to kind of explore more if you've done already, kind of done what is expected of you. So that is where I think the shadow plays a very key role, where she's able to kind of sit down and explain to her, look, it's fine. Mistakes are a part of learning, and all of us make mistakes when we learn. So, it is okay. Now, if only my daughter could regulate herself when this happens, then obviously, if 6-year-olds could regulate themselves, we'd be living in a perfect world. But sadly, that's not the case, right? So I think that is where it helps for somebody to be able to step in and remind, give a little sensory break and say, yeah, now that your work is done, because like, IBPYP is not a typical classroom. So when the work is done, there is always the scope for, a little sensory break where the shadow can remind her and say, come, let's go out for, let's take a walk. It's a very green campus. So let's go out, let's take a walk and let's come back. So, that moment the moment has passed, right? So, that's a strategy. Reminding her to breathe is a strategy. Or, if she's done her work before everybody else in the class, then reminding her to go and take a book from the class library and read. Or, when you realize that she's somebody who's very fond of reading, and then here she is blowing her head off because she's made one mistake in division. So you can kind of, take her away from that situation, give her a book to read. Little simple strategies, nothing that is rocket science, nothing that is like, out of the world. But these little things, if only a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old could do herself, then we would be living in a perfect world. But we live in a world where 6 and 7-year-olds, tend to many times not be able to do all of these things themselves. I think, that is where it is played, with the shadow, it's played a very good role, because the shadow has been able to establish a very good rapport with my daughter, enough to be able to, kind of take her away, understand her enough to be able to kind of, take her away from that situation, give her emotional coping strategies. And also, like Ms. Bindya was saying, right? She's somebody who's very young, she's just out of college, and somebody who's very friendly with kids, not just with Kriti, but with the other children in the classroom. So, she kind of steps in if another child wants a little help with something. So, she's not perceived as an outsider. She's not perceived as, somebody overbearing, but she's just, perceived as a person who somebody else can also kind of go and, if they have a little difficulty, go and ask her for help, to be able to collaborate with the homeroom teachers, and to understand, that maybe in a specialist class, there is no specialist classes being, things like art, things like music, things like computer, robotics, where, it's not a typical classroom. So you don't have to, kind of be stuck next to the child, but you kind of know when to back off, and you kind of know when to step in and know enough to, back off and say, okay, this 40 minutes, I'm going to wait outside because, hey, you know what, you can do this yourself. Those little things, right? So in my case, I think the need largely has been socio-emotional, more to be able to regulate and manage her own emotions in the class, more to do with the fact that her level of expectation is this, and obviously when mistakes happen, things happen. So that way, I think the experience has been very good. So yes, yeah, I think it's kind of been very good, because obviously in a mainstream classroom, at the end of the day, if there's one kid who's blowing her head off, it's going to be very difficult for the HRP also, right? As much as we wish there was no need for this, but yeah, I think, that way it's been very good. The way she's been able to establish rapport, the way she's understood that all she needs at this point of time is a little bit of distraction, the way she's kind of, bonded with the other children in the classroom, so she doesn't seem like a complete outsider. I think all of that has been very good. Yes.
I agree with you, Miss. I think so. The social and the emotional regulation and the self-regulation is much more important there, because academics can come anytime.
Exactly.
Once that that is that is being catered nicely over there. Academics comes like in a click
Yes.
actually. So if they are able to do that self regulation and the emotional regulation very nicely, I think so they are ready for anything. So our kids are needs those things.
True. Especially, I think children who end up in mainstream, right? As much as we love to live in a world where we are seeing every child needs to go to a mainstream school. See, at the end of the day, children with higher support needs, given what academic requirements are, given what a school's requirements are, it will be very difficult for children with, in the current scenario, children with very high level of support needs to be in the mainstream for a long period of time. Maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years, maybe maximum, primaries till when they can be supported, right? So typically, mainstream supports children who, have slight differences, who have slight difficulties. More often than not, these can be, these iron out over a period of time with some amount of help, or they are manageable. So that is the profile of children who ultimately end up in mainstream, right? And when we are saying that is the profile of children who are ending up in mainstream, if those children are able to get the right kind of support and help when they need, my understanding is that, these challenges will iron out a little sooner. So, that's where I think shadow works. Yeah.
All right. With the interest of time and everybody's this, we'll be taking one last question. If anybody has anything to share.
I have typed
Uh,
it in the chat.
okay. I'm so sorry. Let me read it out. I just saw it. How long do you feel kids would need a shadow at school? Does the need usually stop after middle grade, or will the need be there for many years to come?
Usually the need fades because as children grow, their brain also grows with them. The brain develops, gets more organized. So there are a lot of things that the children were not able to do at a younger age, they're able to do when they're older. Um, but sometimes that is not enough for a shadow to be moved out because um, as they grow, as they develop, the expectations in the classroom also keeps growing, and they that gap between the expectations and their their skills to regulate or to meet those expectations continue to have that gap. So when that gap remains, now we've had families where children just started getting adjusted and they did not need a shadow at all, and a shadow teachers also did a lot of weaning. They would give them the space, and they would do a lot of things on their own. The children would do a lot of things on their own. And in those cases we've had where the child moves on to the next grade and the child is absolutely independent, they don't need a shadow. But as I told earlier, if the child continues to need a shadow even at an older age like 11, 12, 13, then we need to reevaluate the setting. Because if the child continues to need it, that's because the setting that the child is in is probably not the right setting. Then we will have to think about a different system of schooling, or an alternative option for schooling for the child.
Yes, thank you. That answers. Thank you.
Um, okay. Anybody else? Anything to ask?
Yeah, hi. This is me, Vijayta. Sorry, I'm not able to turn on my camera right now. Two things. First, how do I get in touch with Insight? Um, will it if I need to work on a talk to moms here, the in Delhi, how do I go about getting that done? So this session was actually very informative and very useful, and I'm sure a lot of parents are going to benefit. Those who have not been able to join today will be able to. A lot of parents from my child's school are going to benefit from whatever we discussed here today. Of course, that is also why I requested for the recording initially. If there's a recording, that'll be very helpful. And otherwise, I personally feel that I would want to talk about this more. I would want to consult more and gain more insights. So, how to go about doing
Yeah,
that?
definitely. I will help you out here. So I will be putting down my number as well as the website for Insight in the chat box, and you can get in touch with us and book an appointment anytime you require for further consultation or anything. And in terms of the recording, we will be sending it across via mails, like a link of it or something like that, where more and more parents can get they can use whatever was shared today in the session. So these are the two things. In case there's anything else, as I mentioned, I'll be dropping my number as well as the website. You can book an appointment and get in touch anytime you want.
Yes. I'm a lawyer. I've primarily worked with women and child rights, and in a lot of matrimonial disputes or domestic violence disputes or dissertation issues, I have seen that women are really struggling to make ends meet, and when there is a special child involved, even more. Like, we have had like very heartbreaking stories where the mother is, even if she's working, she's left with just 1 year worth of funds to manage therapies, basic therapies. um, so that mother, when she is also asked to send a shadow to school, how do I help like, that person? What can be done in that regard? What matlab, is the basic uh, guideline as to how much should a shadow charge according to classroom, according to which grade the child is in, or behavioral levels of the child, or the learning levels of the child? Is there a baseline that can be referred to?
I wouldn't be able to tell you about the baseline for pricing, but we do work around families who have more of a need and they need some kind of financial support. We work on the sometimes we help them by giving them shadows who might not be as expensive, because we also our price points are also based on the shadows qualification, educational qualification and experience. Most of our shadows, I think primarily we have shadows who have a master's degree in psychology. We have some shadows who have an undergrad degree in psychology. Uh, but we've also in the past found shadows who have probably who's a high school graduate, and we would give them basic training and have them support the families. So that is how we control the prices for the families, by looking at somebody who can support the child, but with a lot more training from our end maybe, but may not have the educational qualifications of the shadow for whom you may be paying a lot higher.
Okay.
I don't know if that would help you in any way, but that has been one way we have been supporting. But otherwise, it has been a that has been a challenge for us also to support families, because we if we don't pay the right amount, we won't be able to get the right kind of help
Absolutely.
also.
Yeah.
So that has been one of our pain points also that we've been trying to work on.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Vichika.
Yes, sir, you can go ahead with your question.
Just 1 second. Yeah, hi. Can you hear me? Am I
Yes,
audible?
please. Yes.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. We are actually in Singapore right now, and I think our main contact so far has been Vindhya Madam in Indus. So our son actually, who is 11 years old, he will actually join Indus from August. So I'm in touch with Insight for a shadow teacher based on the request from Indus. And I was, uh, listening to the 11 and 12 years threshold, for shadow teacher. And I understand, I mean, each child is different. So actually what I'm happy to see here is there are so many people who are into this and there is an ecosystem. We have been out of India for almost 14 years and our elder one did not need any support. So now to actually see that there is an ecosystem, people so dedicated and into this subject, actually we are starting to feel far more comfortable about moving back to India and actually working with all of you closely to make him reach whatever potential he can achieve in his life. So I'm really thankful for this talk and all the insights you have given, and I look forward to working with you for my son specifically. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, sir. It means a lot. Here we come to the end of this session. I have put the website for Insight on the chat box. I am just putting my number as well. Anybody who wants to further like book look for shadow services, for further consultations or anything, you can give me a call, and maybe we can see what are the requirements and have a conversation ahead. Thank you all the parents and especially the panel members to be here and share the insightful knowledge and conversation that we have had. I hope it has cleared a lot of doubts for everyone. Yeah, thanks a lot. If anybody wants to say anything in the end, please.
I'm very happy that I was part of this because I got to know other part of uh, uh, the school actually. So I am into the school into it, and the parents. So now it's like outside the school, I have those connections as well, and what they feel and what are the things that they are into it. So I think so it gave a much more broader view for me. What should be my next goal is also, I think so I've already planned. So thank you for this. Thank you so much to include me in this talk. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Bye bye. Harshita, I guess you are asking for a list of inclusive schools. So before leaving, can you just drop in your email address and I will send across a mail to you, which has a list of schools that we have worked with or we know are inclusive. So yeah, I can share the mail. So just drop in your email ID and yeah, we can, everybody can start leaving the meeting.
Thanks, Maitri. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vindhya ma'am. Vindhya ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
madam. Thank you, Vidya. Thank you, Shweta. All the others. Thank you, Maitri.
Thank you so much.